Quebec cheese curds, soon to be protected to promote authentic poutine around the world. Like imagine, like think Scotch, think like Bordeaux wine, Champagne. All these places have this kind of standardized label of like authenticity, right? This official designation. The Quebec dairy industry is trying to be like, it needs to be certified. It needs to be authentic, a protected designation, so not everybody can claim to be doing poutine. And sometimes, you'll come across some like
To be fair, growing up in Ontario, you see some poutines and it's questionable.
horrific.
But honestly, sometimes it's pretty good.
Folks, the news is out. A lot of news is out. Too much news is out. And usually, every now and then, I do a little news review to go over the top headlines in Montreal that you might have missed. This time, there's actually too much. So I enlisted the help of Katia Lo Innes, producer at The Breach, journalist, and frequent guest.
It's great to be back.
Thank you for coming back. What was the last episode about that we did?
The Montreal municipal election.
Of course.
Yes. Crazy.
And the winner, it's been announced. Soraya Martinez Ferrada. She's at it again.
She is doing her bike lane audit.
She's
as
doing
promised.
the bike lane
It's gonna
audit.
happen.
Did you see that video of her with the
Yes.
pothole?
Yes.
But you said yes even before. I think.
That video was like, yeah. Because I think I was talking to somebody and they're like, what has Soraya done? And this was as the crazy snowstorm was hitting New York City. And I feel like everyone obviously got all those releases of Zoran Mamdani being like, stay calm, everybody. And meanwhile, Soraya Martinez is just like, I got a flat tire,
Like
crazy.
laughing.
And I'm
It kind
like,
of has like Kamala like vibes.
she is. I was like, girl, you're the mayor. Do something. Fill the pothole.
That's what the guy apparently who went to pick up her car.
Yeah.
Like the guy who's like towing her car is like, you're the mayor.
Like,
He's like, why is this happening to you?
Literally.
Well, listen, it's happening to everyone. But the municipal elections are done. Today we're talking about so what I asked you and what I also did is we picked out a bunch of headlines, but we have too many. So we're gonna start with what we're not gonna talk about too much, but we're gonna mention real quick. We call them skips.
Yeah, just the quick headlines because
Yeah.
we can't get too much.
The quick headlines and then the bigger stories. I think does merit a little
So
further.
I can start with
further
my
discussion.
skips.
So yeah, please.
So
go
first of
ahead.
all, sure, everyone's heard 2 pilots killed after Air Canada plane collides with vehicle at New York's LaGuardia Airport. This is notable because it was a plane that was leaving from Montreal.
Yeah.
connection.
Kind of tragic.
And the next, very sad. Also, this one's strange. 2 men accused of fathering hundreds of kids banned from donating sperm in Quebec. That one's really weird. And then
Weird.
finally, on a more optimistic note, New Montreal Cafe hopes to dispel myths surrounding Quebec's sovereignty.
Who asked
Finally,
for this?
a cafe for sovereigntists.
I know that's what everyone, I'm always at a cafe and I'm like, I wish this cafe had a clearer stake in the sovereignty debate.
And finally, they have one.
And finally, we have one. My skips. The news about it's less so about the actual news headline, but on Sunday there was an Amber Alert at like 4:25, and some people were like getting into a debate of like, oh, why are these Amber Alerts so?
That happens every time we have an Amber Alert.
No, exactly. People are like, why are these so inconvenient? I'm
I
like,
think
well,
they're supposed to be. Like,
that's
by
the
design.
point. It's like, hey, by the way, like a child is missing. Thankfully, the child has been found now. My other skip. Quebec's housing tribunal rules no pet clause in rental lease violates charter rights. This is great news for all you pet owners out there. If you own a dog, a cat, a parakeet, a budgie, maybe a gigantic rabbit, as one of my friends does, good news that your landlord cannot kick you out because of that.
Yeah. See, I did not even know this was a clause.
Well, in Ontario, it's like illegal. You can't. In Ontario,
Legally.
landlords can't put that in their leases. But in Quebec, it's been sort of like something that's been allowed. It's kind of the weird. Like, there's a lot of ways that Quebec I find is pretty good for leases sometimes. Oh, there's certain protections, right? Like we don't have to pay like first and last. We don't need to make security deposits, but you're not allowed pets. Or landlords are allowed to put no pet clauses. In a recent tribunal now, it's not that they can't, but there's some defense because a tenant who had a pet won their case. So now there's it's optimistic times, but you would still have to go through the court process. But listen, things are looking good. My other skip, Quebecers who fought in Ukraine awarded medals for their sacrifice. This is like, yeah, this is a skip because we just can't get into
Yeah,
it.
we
But
can. But I saw that and I was like, it's too much.
yeah. It's what are we doing there? What's going on over there? We don't have soldiers there, and there's a bunch of weird stuff happening with.
All I did see was like Quebec was like awards or was like recognizes the service of people in Ukraine. I was like, oh no, because I think the last time we tried to award or recognize someone who fought in Ukraine, it was a Nazi.
Katia was talking about it was at the House of Commons where the seals that are the MPs just clapped for whoever it was, and then afterwards they found out, wait a minute, this guy used to be a Nazi.
He's part of an SS division.
Yeah, that's not nice. So that's a skip, but let's get into the actual headlines. All right, so for mine, Bonjour Hi, OQLF gears up for new secret shopper language check. This was in the Gazette, written by Andy Riga. Here's the subtitle. Undercover observers will visit 7,800 stores in the coming months to see whether workers greet and serve customers in French, English, or both.
Interesting. And yeah, I see here it's now carried out by a private firm at a cost estimated for $350,000.
$350,000.
Which, I mean, given like the scope of any budget, this is not the most amount of money, but given that it is a private firm doing this, and this is something that they're obviously contracting a bunch of people for, just trying to think of all the other things this money could be going towards.
Of course, yeah. I mean, this is like the classic kind of. I mean, this is one of those like remnants, right? The remainders of like real culture war stuff we have here in Montreal, in Quebec. I mean, I say Montreal because it's half of these visits will be in Montreal, obviously. Because I think when they actually did it across the province, it's like, oh, it's only really a problem, so to say, here in Montreal.
It does really feel like when the SPVM needs to hit a certain, like, they need to hit their jaywalking quota. And they just go to the place where there's going to be the most jaywalking. And in this case, they're going to the place with the most English, and it happens to be
it's
Montreal.
Always at the end of the month that they're out there, checking for speed, who's speeding, who's jaywalking. It's always at the end of the month. And I guess something similar, something that is interesting that Andy pointed out in this article is that this usually happens every 6 years. The last one was in 2024. So for whatever reason, they're trying to speed up the results of this. There is
it could be that
election coming up.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's probably
elections.
highly influenced by the election, given the fact that the CAQ seems to be kind of polling not super well, especially since there seems to be this consensus by the establishment media that the Quebec Liberal Party is kind of like on an upswing that hasn't been seen since like Jean Charest, I feel, which is pretty wild.
I don't remember. People didn't like that guy too much at the end.
Yeah. So I think that is really interesting, given the fact that they're doing this ahead of time. I don't know.
It's so more than half of the visits will be in Montreal. They're hitting 5 sort of sections of Montreal. So they're going for section 1, Côte-des-Neiges, Snowden, and the town of Mount Royal. Section 2, Pointe Claire. Section 3, Western Downtown between Park Avenue and Claremont Avenue in Westmount. Section 4, the Saint Laurent Boulevard, the corridor between Little Italy and Old Montreal, the whole
These are
strip of the
it's
main.
funny how specific it's like not the Eastern Downtown, which that's where UQAM is, and
Of
it's
course,
like very like historically francophone. They're like no, just the western part where Concordia is.
Yeah, and then section 5, the rest of the island.
Yeah. It is interesting because you do see like how languages like police kind of like ununiformly, where you've got places that are like, oh, this is a very working class neighborhood like Côte-des-Neiges, but then you have some place like Westmount where it's like I wouldn't necessarily say that the people there are in any danger of being persecuted.
No, exactly. Yeah. It's like no, not the poor people in Westmount. My heart always goes out to the people who have to work those stores because they must deal with the very, very particular clients.
Yes, I mean it is true that like to be Anglophone is to be a linguistic minority in Canada, which I think I forget who, Eris from Discordia, a literary magazine, pointed out is very akin to saying like the Afrikaners are a linguistic minority in South Africa.
Yeah. Anglophones are definitely a minority here in Quebec, but there's always a difference of like class,
100%.
right? I would think, which is what you're trying to point out. I think to me something that's interesting. So I mean, this is like the takeaway for me is like this feels like an old kind of debate, right? It's like just in the same way that Bill 94 feels like this old kind of like resummoning of like Bill 21 stuff. This feels like this kind of like thing where I'm like, are we still talking about Bonjour Hi? Like,
I do wonder who it's for. I guess like we are functionally living in the bubble of Montreal, so for us it feels kind of silly, especially since you see so many new immigrants who are multilingual. Like this necessarily doesn't speak to them or apply to them.
Mm-hmm.
And really does feel like it's for like a specific type of voter in like Quebec and
No,
Quebec
totally.
City specifically. And yeah, it does. I think something I saw very recently, very similar. La Majoun Villeray, which is I think an Armenian bakery, they were hit also by OQFL. Fine for having TikToks in English, and they also are. I think they're French speakers. You go there, it's bilingual, and so yeah, I think this really begs the question: like, who is this for?
Right.
And what do we want to accomplish with this?
No, exactly. I think I also think about it was Mama Khan, this Pakistani restaurant in Peshawari Pakistani restaurant on like Saint Denis in Montreal in the Plateau that was also hit with these OQLF complaints about their social media posts, which is so interesting, right? Because it's like when you think about who is this for, it's like, well, clearly like all these restaurants have whatever their clientele, you know, and they're going to be serving their clientele in that language. For some of these places, it's going to be English. Almost always these places can serve it in French. It's more about just finding those kinds of like, I guess like wedge places that might be too slow to serve in French, or just trying to create this kind of issue out of something that I would say, for the most part, is a non-issue, right?
It is. Also, I think very specifically for the case of La Majoun, I don't know about Mama Khan, but this was about TikTok, which I'm like, I don't even know if the OQLF has any regulations surrounding like a digital space, which isn't necessarily like you're not going to a TikTok with the impression of being served by the real business. You're going to see the social media, which I think, as we know, it's primarily oftentimes English. I see
for sure.
English language TikToks of random wholesalers in China.
Yeah,
Like that's just kind of like the language of the internet right now.
You're also getting those too.
Yeah, I'm getting those. So it is really interesting.
Yeah.
And also I think, I can see in the Andy Reid article that the OQLF, since the CAC has come into power in 2019, their budget has ballooned to I think 49 million or 49 billion? $49 million.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's very interesting that they're kind of doing all this, and it's obviously seeming to affect it. If it's Mama Khan and La Majoun, these immigrant communities, which I think people you'd want to buy into this program,
course,
and you'd want
totally.
them to buy into this, and they don't. They seem to be alienating them.
No,
versus
yeah.
like I think trying to entrench French in places that I think, no offense, are like Quebec's population is very old. Like if there's no kind of traditional. Yeah, it's like it's very silly to be trying to like enrich that tradition where like these people are unfortunately just kind of.
It's taking the punitive route, right? That's like when your question before is like, you know, who's this for? And it's clearly this kind of, it's a show of punishment. It's a show of like increased surveillance. And it's like, it's the fear of it. And that cannot, because of that structure, it can't be for those people that they're surveying, you know? It has to be for everyone else outside of Montreal who are worried about this kind of like threat.
It is definitely a theater of surveillance.
Yeah, totally.
Well, let's hope that the Sovereigntist Cafe is a project free of surveillance.
Imagine you go there and they serve you. I demand to be served in English at the Sovereigntist Cafe. I don't know what would happen. I'm going to move on to my next little headline. Quebec cheese curds. Soon to be protected to promote authentic poutine around the world. This is going to be like, so this is the reason I choose this one.
I thought this could be in a skip for me. But
for me, it's somewhere in between. So I'll name it in a second. So for me, it's like, it's kind of interesting because I think to me, it's more like this, I'll add this to like the appendix of all the coverage maybe that we did, right, on the Michelin guide coming to Montreal. You see this in other places. Like imagine, like think Scotch, think like Bordeaux wine, Champagne. All these places have this kind of standardized label of like authenticity, right? This official designation. They call it geographical indicators, GIs. And what it essentially does is kind of like for a place to claim it has poutine, they're trying to make, the Quebec dairy industry is trying to be like, it needs to be certified. It needs to be authentic. A protected designation, so not everybody can claim to be doing poutine. And sometimes, you know, you'll come across some like.
To be fair, growing up in Ontario, you see some poutines and it's questionable.
Horrific.
But honestly, sometimes it's pretty good.
Well, that's the thing,
That's
right?
the thing. It's good.
Yeah.
It's just like you have fries, you have
It's
gravy, and you have
different.
some sort of cheese, and it tends to be pretty tasty.
No, exactly. I mean, you can see this with like other food things, right? Like pizza. Your idea of pizza will change from classically, like let's say Chicago to Detroit to New York to Naples, right?
sure.
It's like you have these different kind of
I
iterations.
will say, when I first saw this, it really made me think of Italy, and I think Europe is a place that has a very strong system for giving permission. So, in Europe, they have a very, very strong system for designating certain things to be authentic, like champagne from Champagne, Bordeaux from Bordeaux, as you said. And it really makes me think of Italy, which is a place that I think is very particular about their food and their tradition, which I think obviously has its roots in their kind of like fascist, traditional, national mythology. But what's very interesting about Italy is that actually the Parmesan industry is largely, I think, the most successful businesses are actually like mostly Punjabi run or like primarily staffed by South Asians. And that also like, I don't know, makes me think about the Quebec dairy industry when we're like, okay, like obviously like if this is going to be something that's agriculture, we do know that the backbone of the Quebecois agricultural industry is migrant workers.
Of course, yeah, almost always. Yeah. To me, the real concern that I bring this up, it's kind of like it's maybe more like philosophical one, but like anytime these things happen, it's not like to the benefit of like average Quebecers. You know, it's clearly it's just kind of you're giving the keys to something that's like this kind of cultural institution puts in to this industry now. You know, you're proclaiming that this industry now they get to say whatever is puts in, whatever isn't puts in, and it causes things to be stuck in like stasis. It causes things to be just stuck, right? Not stuck in stasis, but it causes things to just freeze as they currently are, and it prevents a wacky poutine like one in
I will
Ontario.
say Toronto, a jerk chicken poutine that's Toronto's like best export, or jerk chicken chow mein.
The beautiful thing about culture is that it's like it transforms everywhere. Like, you know, every time you have migration, these meals kind of like change. You know, people take on whatever character of the place they're in, and it's this beautiful thing. You know, and that's my kind of concern whenever. For
me, it's again, this is just like the OQLF secret shoppers. I'm like, who is this for? This all feels like 10 years too late to have like poutine be like designated as authentic. If this feels like should have happened in the BuzzFeed era of the listicle, it just feels like it just feels very, very late to me. But I guess this is how culture works. Like it eventually is trickled down, and many years later is then like accepted by the establishment. In this case, it's the beloved dish of poutine.
It was some focus group, or it was this dairy industry executives who were like just kind of twiddling their thumbs, like, how can we make more money?
Looking forward to the day that a rum and coke becomes like a designated thing, or like a Caesar. Like, like it has to be like in Ontario for Caesar.
You have, a dark and stormy. That's something that's actually like very similar to champagne. It's like it needs to be made with a certain type of rum.
I did not know that. Interesting.
So you see this happening everywhere around the world, and now guess what? Quebec too. Now let's move on to something.
I think Quebec is obviously interesting as a province because I think honestly it really is special and that has such a strong identity compared to a lot of provinces. Like it has a very strong cultural identity and output, and the way that it's protected is so. For me, it's like often so like counterintuitive. Yeah. It's like the beautiful thing about culture. It's that it's alive. It's shifting. It's changing. You know, it's like reacting. I feel like Ontario is a place that has a really vibrant culture that the province doesn't take advantage of enough. And I think maybe it's to the province's benefit. Maybe that's what allows it to continuously shift, and be so like vibrant.
Right. Like, does the province actually need to do these kinds of interventions to protect things, or does it just kind of allow things to sort of
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's one more. Analogy I'm thinking of. It's like I mentioned this before, but like Scotch, right, is something that is like very controlled. Like you can't like if someone in, let's say, I don't know, like Mexico City wants to make a whiskey, they can't call it a Scotch, right? Because the Scotch has to come from Scotland, and each region in Scotland, as the snobs will know, has their own kind of particulars, and it's like very kind of like set. You know, there's hardly any new players coming in. One of the reasons that Canadian whiskey, which for the longest time was just considered brown vodka, was able to sort of make this kind of like renaissance in like the 2010s through like it was the Crown Royal Northern Harvest Rye that won like Best Whiskey of the Year award. It's like a $30 bottle. You've seen it at the SEQ, and it beat out like 100 like bottles that were like multiple times more expensive.
I forget his name. Sorry, go on.
I'm just gonna say, like, one of the reasons it did so well is because the Canadian whiskey doesn't exist under this like really rigid structure of like protected designations that Scotch does, right? So they can experiment, you know, things are open to that. And I'm not saying, I'm sure people will still experiment with puts in, but it's like there's a certain philosophy that we ascribe to when we try to put in these kinds of protections and designations that I'm kind of hesitant about.
Just going off of that ground rule, what I wanted to mention is, back to my point about the Italian Parmesan and this obsession with authenticity, is there's literally an academic, Alberto Grandi, who always raises controversy within Italian food circles for saying that Wisconsin has the most authentic take on Parmesan cheese, which again, as you said, to the Crown Royal and the Scotch and the Canadian Scotch, and is it just brown vodka? Is this Parmesan? Is this just cheese from Wisconsin?
Well, are they known as cheeseheads?
They are known as cheeseheads. I believe it.
That has to give you some level of authenticity, you know. I kind of love that. You ever watch that episode of Sopranos where like the Italian American like Sopranos, like they're from
they
New
go to
Jersey,
Italy?
they go
Yeah,
to Italy
yeah.
and they're like, what the hell is
They're like,
going
this is a
on
dump.
here?
Yeah, and they come back and they're so happy.
No, yeah. I mean, there's something there, I think,
This is
for us
something
to
to be said.
reflect on. I have another headline. More serious. Now we're back in the municipal realm. Montreal to cut 1,000 jobs over 4 years, maintain hiring freeze. This is on CBC News. So we mentioned it before. This is the work of Soraya Martinez Ferrada, our current mayor, who is, for whatever it's worth, fulfilling campaign promises.
She really said she was going to do this.
Yep, and she is doing it. So over the course of this mandate before the next election, they are continuing their hiring freeze and they are cutting 1,000 jobs. They're trying to see what's going to stick. The whole claim is that, it's the classic kind of like conservative claim of like, oh, there's big government, which is like, City Hall is like, Montreal is like, of course, the second largest city in Canada. But
I will say, for a big city, I would hope that there's a lot of people working for the city.
No, of course, yeah. It's not like we're not some like rinky-dink town, It's like we need to have like a bolstered kind of workforce. But yeah, so this article continues. Under the previous administration, the number of city employees increased by more than 10%. But Martinez Ferrada pointed out most were not involved in providing direct services to citizens. In the city center, she said managerial or professional roles increased by 29% compared to only 2% for blue-collar workers, creating a sense of disconnect for taxpayers. Since the announcement, the union representing Montreal's public sector workers has come out saying the administration's moves will necessarily affect services, calling white-collar workers essential. The Syndicat des fonctionnaires municipaux de Montréal said the city should have sought the union's advice on how to improve services for citizens, saying, we know the job better than anyone else. Our members, this is now from the union president, in quotations, our members who are predominantly women are already tired, and now this new tile falls on their head. That's from the union's president, Eliane Schofield-Lamarche, in a statement. So it's kind of, I feel like what you have here is like this classic kind of story. Everyone knows the story. It's austerity. It's kind of like, listen, we have to fire people. This is all to like make our books cleaner, make the taxpayers pay less. Effectively, if we were to believe the union, what we're going to get is actually, of course, you're going to be paying less for less workers, but then you'll also be getting less services in Canada's second most populous city.
In a sense, you're going to be paying less workers, but I think the workers themselves will be accumulating very similar hours for the work they will put in, and that ends up what that ends up, and what that often ends up
engendering.
Yeah, what that often ends up like engendering is just like very overworked workers, and then high layoffs, a lack of institutional knowledge, a lack of
Yeah.
I think this really reminds me, I think austerity is obviously a big word right now as we are in this kind of like war-induced economic recession. Mark Carney very similarly ran on this kind of impetus to run the government like a business. And it was just recently announced that there are about 12,000 projected public sector jobs to be cut in the next 3 years in the federal service. So I think these cuts are kind of being felt uniformly across the board in municipal, provincial, and federal levels.
No. Yeah, you see that. I think what you say about running it like a business, this is like classic, like Soraya Martinez Ferrada. This is classic, like Ensemble Montréal, where they're just trying to treat City Hall like a business. They even go as far as to call like taxpayers
shareholders.
Shareholders or like clients. It's like, you're not getting what you're paying for. It's like, well, buddy, you pay the city to sort of like even like run on its own. You don't need. I'm not treating this like some kind of like transaction where I need to know every penny is being spent.
A taxpayer isn't a shareholder, and that the taxpayer is expecting the city to give them money. A taxpayer is paying taxes in the expectation that the city will use them to this benefit. So like, I don't know, maintaining roads, maintaining public services, maintaining education, maintaining green spaces, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think the new measure, this is at the end of the article now, the new measure, Pinard said, will affect around 7,000 of the city's 30,000 employees. So that Pinard there is speaking specifically about their comprehensive examination of the city's expenses and activities. Right now, it's like, imagine there's just like a gigantic audit, It's like, they're treating it like we're the new owners of the city, and right now we're just making sure all the books are good. Everyone who has jobs, like you might be cut. You got to be worried. all for just the taxpayers, so that people might pay less property taxes. But we'll see. I'm really
It is
doubtful this is going to be helpful.
For me, it is really telling this is something that is trying to appeal, I think, to a suburban style voter of saying like,
course.
oh, this is not affecting like actual front facing. It's like 2% of these jobs being created are blue collar versus 29 is white collar. And it's like, I guess to a voter, you would see a city job is worth having as like the guy who sweeps your street and not necessarily like an administrator who is like making sure teachers get paid on time.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I think it is interesting. They're trying to. They mentioned it briefly, right? It was like those jobs that were created weren't blue collar workers.
She did the property tax rates did jump though.
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, we'll see about that.
she did increase that. So there's only so much austerity you can do in
Bang for
Montreal.
your
It
buck.
seems.
Do you have any headlines?
Yes, I do actually. I think the big one to me is Montreal is currently, as of today, hosting 18 countries for defense bank negotiations.
What is a defense bank?
That's a great question. So I think it's 18 countries. All of them, either NATO members or allies, are coming together to decide upon something called the Defense, Security, and Resilience Bank Charter. So I myself am still kind of fuzzy on what exactly this is. I actually was looking before this at a schema that the DSRB has created. So I think they are basically, they're called they brand themselves as a nonprofit incubator of leading security and financial experts. And they're founded to inform and support democratic nations regarding the function and mechanisms of establishing this bank. And they see this as necessary because defense spending faces two core financial challenges, which is demand side financing from national governments and then supply side from defense and security industry. So essentially, this is some sort of bank that allows for strengthening industrial capacity and financing demand for these DSR, so defense and security and resilience goods. TLDR, I think this is just another way to institutionalize and further entrench militarism and the military industrial complex and give it sort of this like UN veneer.
Of course.
I guess very similar to like something like I guess like obviously I was gonna say the World Bank in like Switzerland. It's going to be this, and Canada is currently hosting the negotiations
Here in Montreal.
Here in Montreal, I wonder exactly where in Montreal.
I like that it's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So that people could be like, yeah, I work at a nonprofit. It's like, oh, which
Yes,
one? The
yes.
National Defense Bank.
Yeah, but it's a brainchild of this article by the Globe and Mail by Pippa Norman. It's the brainchild of Rob Murray, who is the former CEO of the bank's development group and the founding architect of the NATO's Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic. So
Wow,
this is an ex-NATO guy.
I hate all those words.
Basically, actually, Globe and Mail, here's maybe a better explanation. It's going to be owned by its member countries, which will be asked to contribute in two ways, in capital. And the promise is to provide, so it'll just basically secure Canada's participation in NATO and further EU security actions. And Ottawa is hoping to be involved in this because Ottawa wants to grow its domestic defense industry and provide more support to companies, particularly small and medium-sized businesses.
Your mom and pop shops.
Exactly.
Your
And I
mom
think-
and pop bullet shops.
And what is interesting, another Canadian connection, is that also all big six banks have joined in. They've all supported it. So that's Scotia,
That's a lot of
TD,
support. That's
which is a lot of
significant support.
That's basically the entire
banking industry.
entire banking industry in
Canadian
Canada,
banking industry.
as well as JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, ING, Commerzbank. I know. And then let me just pull up this headline. The BC government is pitching themselves specifically to have Vancouver as the new international headquarters of the DSRB Bank.
It's going to be interesting to see how this kind of continues to develop. But I mean, this kind of it's par for the course, right? To me, and the kind of coverage we've done here, as well as the coverage that's been done at the breach, you see kind of this, I guess, the how developed and developing the kind of wartime industries of Canada are, right? Like in Montreal, you have a lot of aerospace companies. You have, was it Airbus setting up? You have Pratt & Whitney.
You have the Canada Space Agency, which is always acting as kind of like an extension of the arms industry because so much of their research ends up being funneled into private companies.
General Dynamics, which is set up in Quebec. You have a bunch of companies out in Saint Jean. You have some in Valleyfield, and it's like clearly it's like they want. I mean, even this is something we covered on the show before on the episode with Neshua from Habibti Please, but like. Even other countries are seeing this action in Canada, and they're trying to we want a slice of that. Like was Saab, right? What people knew for their cars back in the day. The Saab was trying to pitch Canada like, hey, dump those American jets, dump the F-35, instead buy these Swedish jets, which we can make here, you know? And
Yes.
clearly there's like more and more and more and more of this kind of effort being made to have kind of, I guess,
Yeah.
Canada and other neo countries pick up the
And
slack
people
for
have been
whatever
catching on for
instability from the US.
People have been catching on for a long time. Like, I think Canada is often able to couch its defense under the kind of this broad guise of security. Like the Halifax International Security Forum is one of the largest defense conventions, and it basically functions as like a Davos WEF, but for defense contractors. It's always in Halifax. It was started by Peter MacKay, the former Conservative MP.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
that guy.
And so for me, I feel like the Halifax Security Forum and the kind of like defense bank, these are just very like nice ways to couch, in the same way that Canada likes to couch its military involvement with being a United Nations peacekeeper and being kind of this like global world order, and like we're doing these things because like resilience and security as a way to like kind of be like a nicer and like less militaristic involvement as compared to like the US.
Of course, yeah. I mean, all this kind of stuff is like is happening because of the US has become so like, I guess, diplomatically unreliable, right, for these countries. And that's the thing where it's like we like to think of, I think there's a line that's thrown out about the U.S. being sort of this warmonger, you know, but like as like in terms of pure business, it's kind of unreliable, right? And with this kind of like on and off that they're doing, of course they're going to buy stuff, but like as a diplomatic partner, they're becoming more and more unreliable, which is why we have things like this kind of showing up, which is why we have countries like Canada meeting with South Korea and other allies to try to make up for that like instability from down south.
Yes, and Carney's definitely been doing that. I think he's traveled probably more than any prime minister in his first year and a half. He's making connections.
He's doing
also,
the tour.
To bring this back to austerity, something that this Yahoo Finance article by Ian Bickus, which is originally from the Canadian Press, mentions is that if Canada were to host the War Bank and have it, if Canada were to host if Canada were to host the Defense Bank, it would bring in 3,500 jobs. So which is
It's not even that much.
not that much, but it's interesting to be like, okay, we're gonna slash 12,000 public sector jobs, but there's kind of this assumption that all this defense spending will then engender this kind of new thriving war economy.
Listen, once again, the New World Order conspiracy theorists have another notch. Now they have this defense bank talking. It's not good news. We'll see. So right now those negotiations are happening in Montreal right now as we speak, and that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I don't know how long the negotiations are happening. It's been reported to start today.
Yeah, on Monday. Yeah.
No timeline announced, but I guess we'll see. I don't expect this to manifest very soon, but keep an eye on
these things. I mean, these things are always so
years.
slow moving, you know. But it's like they're slow moving, but they're also like once they're set up, that's like a brand new gigantic institution that's going to be like almost impossible to get rid of, right? So it shows you what Carney's up to and what the other defense countries are up to.
And then my next headline, it's actually kind of two that we can talk about together. The first is actually from La Presse, and it was published by Suzanne Colpron on March 17th. Une mère échappe à l'expulsion à la dernière minute. And then also, I think 5 days later, in CBC by Verity Stevenson, days before deportation, Ottawa pauses removal of refugee son, husband. And this son and husband are also in Montreal. So here we have two cases of two different people based in Montreal whose refugee claims have been rejected. And in one case, I forget exactly which minister, but had a minister get involved, and specifically Maria Cordova, who is a Mexican woman. She was 28 years old. She was supposed to be deported, but that was canceled. And then also Gary Ananda Sangari in the case of Ravi Chan and his 7-year-old son.
Yeah.
So that was in Montreal. So we have these two very similar stories, and this is also coming in as if people have been following, just kind of a general crackdown across the country in immigration laws. But I think Quebec has kind of flown under the radar for being a little bit more strict than other provinces. Quebec also really notably canceled or put on pause spousal sponsorship, which was a very common family reunion path for a lot of people who were temporary foreign workers, a lot of refugees, student visa claimants. So yeah, I think these together, it kind of shows where the trend is generally heading in Quebec.
No, totally. I mean, this has been a long time coming. I remember like when we were doing coverage of the elections and the federal elections in 2025. I remember it was a shift of the Liberals in the real last kind of like weeks and months of the Trudeau administration, where they were kind of pivoting on the usual like 1 bajillion refugees welcome, to actually being sort of adopting some of those conservative anti
happened very, very
immigration
quickly.
lines. Yeah. It's just such a shift, and then now we're seeing sort of a result
I will
of
say
it,
Quebec
right?
never adopted that.
This
They're
is
like, thank God, everyone's coming.
Yeah. Maybe that's why the
Everyone-
Liberals did so well. I mean, it's interesting because in Quebec here, you also have that like French dynamic, right? Of like these kinds of like language exams. To me, there's that story about the.
It was Lena Diab, the immigration minister, who intervened for Miracoda. I wanted to remember who.
There you go. Thank you for that addendum. It was so I remember this was one of the headlines I saw that was like so surprising. Well, Quebec family forced to return to Mexico after mother says she failed French exam by 1 point.
This is a different Mexican family, by the way. I
Yes,
think.
correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
So
I mean, you've had all these stories kind of like,
these are all like pretty big stories and pretty big outlets too. Like,
Totally,
they're all being
yeah.
treated as kind of these notable human interest pieces.
I think it's the timing and context of it, right? Because with all the kind of anti-immigrant sentiment in this down south of the border, that has kind of resulted in this state violence by ICE, these real violent deportations, right? You have this kind of shift in Canadian media where people are like, all right, let's try to find what looks like here on the ground. On our program, we just had Mustafa Hanawi, who kind of came on to talk about the different kind of deportations that him and the immigrant worker center that he works at is trying to like fight against. And the picture he painted was very clear. It's like right now the deportations are bad, and with like Bill C-12 in the works, with Bill C-12 kind of going between House of Commons and the Senate and back to the House, it's like you have this potential bill that is gonna ramp this all up even more. You know?
And we not only do we have that bill, we also have, again, the funding being directed away from other public sector jobs to beefing up the CBSA, so Canadian Border Security Agency.
No, exactly.
Yeah, so we I think Mark Carney announced there's going to be 1,000 new CBSA agents. And I think this news is coming also as there's two kind of high-profile complaints against the CBSA. First of all, there's a larger... Let me find it in my notes. I've lost it.
I think it was in Ontario, right?
There was one in Ontario, specifically in Ontario, there was a CBSA officer arrested in a drug trafficking case. But then also there is a House of Commons inquiry into sexual harassment writ large in the agency as a systemic problem, which unfortunately comes as no surprise. But I think, again, is very telling that this is the one agency that's being allowed to expand while all other agencies, except for anything involving defense, is being told to cut back and prepare for layoffs.
They're cutting like tourism funding. They're cutting science funding, but then for border security, the sky's the limit for how much money they can get. It's always like I think this stuff is very. I'm glad we did this because you see this kind of you're starting to see this global picture of like in let's say where there are job vacancies, and where they're gonna let it be. Whether no matter what jurisdiction. Compared to where they want to bolster, it's always there's never enough money in things like security and things like border services. It's to them that's the logic.
There's 1,000 jobs in the border security, 3,500 this potential new potential bank.
No, exactly.
And
exactly.
a lot of employees who are being laid off. I need to actually find the article to confirm this, but I think there's this kind of saying that they want to train the civilian workers to be part of the Ministry of Defense.
Wow.
Yeah, I actually. Let me check that. Cut that if that's not factual.
Yeah. It kind of has what's the word for it? Conscription kind of vibes, our civilian force to the rescue.
Public workers.
Yeah, I mean, all this kind of stuff is sometimes the news is not so happy.
Unfortunately, this is in the Toronto Sun, but they want to
take it with a grain of salt.
But it is true that the Department of National Defense, they wanted to boost the numbers in their Canadian supplementary reserves. So these are civil servants.
Look at that.
So that's it. But take it all with a grain of salt, Toronto Sun.
Folks,
Sun, you know what? Your clock can be right. A broken clock's right twice a day.
There you go. I mean, sometimes they fall onto stuff. It's just you just ignore the general opinions. But then if it's just regular reporting, sometimes they'll get it right, or sometimes they'll fall onto something interesting. I think that does it for today. We're kind of coming up on time, but thank you very much, Katia, for coming on to
Thank you for having me again.
514.
Kalden's always a pleasure. I hope that everyone goes and votes in Cult Montreal. So
make
sure to list Local 514 as the best podcast in Montreal.
Best podcast in Montreal. Local 514. Please put that down for the Cult Montreal readers poll. Take care, folks.